Hi friends, and welcome to part 2 of the Catamaran skiff rebuild. In part 1, my buddy Austin brought his Nautico 19-foot Power Cat, one of the coolest Power Cat skiffs around. If you haven't seen that video yet, or it has been a while since we did part 1, I would click the link above. It'll bring you up to speed on where we're at with the boat, what was wrong with it, and where we're going in this video. So without further ado, let's get this video started. All right, so where we are at with the build is we have got the deck cut out, and now it's time to get into the underside, the stringer system. So on this catamaran, it doesn't have stringers that run lengthwise of the boat. This has basically stringers that run across, which are called bulkheads. So we need to get those bulkheads removed. So the way I'm going to work this repair is I'm not going to just cut out all the bulkheads at once. I want to cut out just every other bulkhead because I want the boat to retain its shape while it's sitting on the trailer. I don't want it to bow out or flex or become twisted. So I've made sure that the boat is level and sitting evenly. And now I'm just going to cut out one bulkhead at a time. After that bulkhead is cut out, I'm then going to grind away and prep my area for the new bulkhead to be tabbed in. This is a sample piece that I'm showing you, but all of the stringer system, everything's going to be done composite on this boat. We're going to do it out of this Divinicel. So the first thing I like to do when I'm doing something that's going to require a lot of panels is I got 4x8 sheets of this, lay them on a big table. And what I want to do is I want to pre-laminate all of my core material. That's what I'm creating. What we're going to do here is create big sheets of core material that's laminated on both sides. I'm using FGCI's vinyl ester resin with 1708 fiberglass. So the way I'm going to do it is 2 laminations on each side. So once you have your core materials already laminated and made, your next step is going to be making your templates. So let's get into how to make templates. All right, so this is what you're going to need to make templates. There's a lot of different ways to do this. This is the method that's probably most common. I feel it's one of the most accurate. It's pretty budget and it just works really well. So you can get yourself a hot glue gun like this. This is just the Harbor Freight cordless one. Thanks, Ed, for turning me on to this. I used to use a corded one, but then, yeah, this just makes life way easier. It's really simple. Turn it on. When that little red light turns green, you are good to go. And this thing lasts for a while. So what I do is any of your home improvement stores sell this. This is hardboard. It's super thin. It's kind of like a pegboard without all the holes in it. So there's a smooth side and a rough side. I don't know if you can see that. So here's food for thought. Whenever you're using this, you want to glue smooth sides to smooth sides. I'll show you that more in a second. I'm going to show you how I make a template exactly. But you then get this piece, a big piece, and basically I just run it through a table saw until I end up with a bunch of thin pieces like this. So that's probably about 1.5 inches. So I'll just rip it on the table saw until I end up with a bunch of small pieces. If you don't have a table saw, you can always use a circular saw. You know, I do prefer something that keeps these lines super straight, especially if you're doing a template on areas or a surface that is straight. You know, will this make or break your template? No, absolutely not. You can use a circular saw. That's what I'm going to use right now to just rip a couple pieces. The surface that I'm going to be duplicating and making a template for is not perfectly straight. So you'll see what I mean. So the cool thing is after you make templates, you can always keep these and reuse them. You just peel away the glue. All right, so I got my pieces cut. You definitely, when you are cutting this stuff, you do not want to breathe this in. I feel like this is more of an irritant even than fiberglass. Definitely not good for you. So wearing a respirator, some sort of a dust mask, and of course always safety glasses when you're doing any kind of cutting. So I've got my pieces. Here we go. Here we go. And guess what? We're green light. let's make some templates. So what we're gonna be making a template for is, I wanna do a deck across here, right? A little false floor on this little skiff. So what I need to do is, I wanna cut out a little bulkhead that I'm gonna glass in, and that's gonna seal my deck. This method and using these pieces with cutting and gluing, I find it works the best. It's pretty cheap. So this is how we're gonna do it. First thing I'm gonna do is, I've got my pieces, and you just need to remember that when we glue, we're gonna always glue smooth surface to smooth surface. So I got my glue gun heated and ready. So what I wanna do is, this stuff is really easy. You can just break it apart the sizes you need. You could cut it if you wanted to, but I'm gonna start with my first piece. That actually, that's pretty good. What I'm looking to see is if there's much of a gap underneath. So I like that there. We've got these two like pre-done. Sometimes you gotta round some little edges. Remember, it's smooth to smooth. Put a little piece of glue. But at the end of the day, these patterns like this, as long as you can get these to hold their shape, you're gonna have a perfect template, a perfect piece. So I wanna get into this little relief a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is, I got two ways to do it. I can either do a small piece and go really small, but the idea is, whatever I'm trying to do here, I can just keep adding small pieces and then tie in across. For the sake of what I'm doing right here on this, I just wanna do a little false floor across the top, and I wanna have a bulkhead right in front of it. So I'm just gonna go with a length here, you know, about ballpark. Almost fits in. You know, could I measure this? Absolutely. So, just gonna do a little glue, little glue, little glue. Let's get this thing set up. All right, so now that I've got my template made, I like to make a little note that, like, where I want the top of my piece to be. You know, it'd be real easy to just make a mistake and trace this whole thing. But then if I were to do that, my height would be there. I want my deck to be sitting here. So really what I'm doing, the template, I was using the bottom edge of this piece to set my line across the deck, and then I'm using down here as my measurement. So the way this will translate is, I push this over, let's just say I go right dead center. I would trace the inside of that, and then I'd be tracing the bottom here, same thing here. And then now if I just connect, make sure you guys can see that. Connect that there. Connect that there. So what I've got there now, this is my piece. So I'll double check it. Do I like that? Yes, that lines up with the bottom. Boom, boom. So now I've got, and if this were one of many, I could label it A, whatever you want to label it. And I know that this is going to be, this surface would face the stern. So generally I'll mark it I'll mark my template, you know, which direction it goes. Or I could say there's a port side, starboard side. You'd be amazed how many boats are not symmetrical. So now that I've got my piece marked, I can cut it out. All right, let's see how it fits. Ho! So there we go. All right, so I've got the piece cut out. Pretend that this is laminated on both sides. This is for instructional purposes. So one of the keys and reasons that it's so nice to pre-make these panels outside of the boat is that now all I have to do, I've gone ahead and marked where I need to grind. I'm gonna grind all of this down. I'm gonna also grind my piece that I'm gonna tab in. Once I have this in place where I want, and I'm happy with how it fits, right? I might have to grind little edges. I'm gonna test fit it, make sure everything's cool. So I wanna make a quick note. There's a couple ways to do it when you're putting these bulkheads in, the stringer or whatever panel. So I could mix up my putty, lay my bead of putty, drop this down, and then create a fillet, and then tab this in. You know, that would be obviously a super strong, the best way to do it. But for something like this, and every application is going to be different, I could just hot glue this piece right in, and then I'm going to glass it in. You know, it really comes down to making that decision. What's going to be the purpose and the intention? How structurally strong does this need to be? So for Austin's boat, I went ahead and puttied in all of the bulkheads, created fillets, glassed them in. But something like this on a little skiff, super lightweight, where it's gonna have a floor across and it's all glassed in, you know, totally get away with just a hot glue gun, gluing these panels in and then done. I mean, heck, I've done some bigger bulkheads, even on bigger boats, where it all depends on the materials you're using. You know, are you using polyester resin, vinyl ester, or using epoxy? So those are all things to take into consideration when you're bonding in your bulkheads or panels or stringers. Once this piece is glued in and it's all prepped, I wipe it down with acetone. I can now take my fiberglass strips that I've pre-cut. I can wet those fiberglass tabs out on a wetting board, and then all I have to do is put them in, work out the air bubbles, and my piece is tabbed in. This is how you end up with really clean work. You're not pouring resin, brushing it on here, making a complete mess of your whole work area. You're keeping it really small and isolated. Jonah and I tag team this, where we go through the measurements, we cut out all of our cloth, we label each piece for each bulkhead. We then can alternate wetting out the pieces. One person's wetting out, one person's handing them, and then just laying our cloth as needed. And you just work like that. And if you're by yourself, you just do small amounts at a time. You wet them out, get it done. Now that the bulkheads have been installed, I also do a piece that goes across, tying each bulkhead into each other and to the center of the boat. Especially on a catamaran, that's going to give some rigidity, but it's also going to give some deck support that was not there to begin with. All right, so now we're going to move on to our deck panels. FGCI has their own version of a Cusa board, which I prefer, and that's what this is here. We're going to be using this 1/2-inch composite board. The same deal. I'm going to be laminating this with 2 laminations per side, but actually, let me backphrase. For this deck, I want to work smarter, not harder. So I'm laminating the bottom side of this Cusa board and these sheets with 2 laminations of 1708. I'm still using the FGCI vinyl ester resin. So I'm laminating the entire bottom side of these 4x8 sheets. And while that's drying, I'm gonna make templates the same way that we just did for the bulkheads. I wanna make templates for the deck area. This is where a lot of people drop the ball or they mess up. You know, this material is not cheap, but with the cost of plywood nowadays, you know, that was something that Austin and I considered, and it was like, you know what, you're spending thousands of dollars on these small skiffs. To upgrade from plywood to something like this only ends up being several $100s more, so it's well worth it to go with the composite material. We're going to, where a lot of people would let's say this square area, right? That I want to make a deck that's going to fit right here. We often assume that number one, things are square, or that we can duplicate a square area. So I've done this in the past. In the past, I might measure this 36 inches. And then I measure this side. And I end up writing on paper the dimensions of this square, or what I think is a square. Remember, most things are not square in boats. Not even close. So, yes, could I write out and create this on paper dimensions? 36 by 24. If I were to try to duplicate these dimensions for a deck, it's not even going to be close to matching. I can promise you. I don't care how accurate you try to be. You try to measure, you use a square, you use this. Maybe your saw is off. Maybe your measuring tape is off. Again, this material is not cheap, so I don't want to mess up and just cut it and then I end up totally off and I've ruined a piece. So what's going to be easier is for me just to make a template the same way we just did for the bulkhead. I'm going to make a template off the surface I want to do. So that's what we did on Austin's boat, and this is how we do it. And then all I'm going to do, if I make a template of this surface, boom, and I continue, yes, I want to add some supports, you know, maybe in corners, maybe across the middle, but this is going to be way quicker and way more accurate to make this template. So that's what I've done now. We've laminated the deck boards on one side. Now we've got our template for Austin's deck. I'm going to cut those deck pieces out and we're going to bond those in one at a time, putting weights on top, really making sure they squish down. And then after we've put all of the deck pieces in and are bonded in, we're now going to laminate them across the entire top of the deck. All right, so now that the entire deck has been laminated over, you know, Austin's going for his finish. He wants it to be nice, but like he's also realistic with, this is a boat that gets used. He's going to use it for all sorts of things. You know, he's wanting a splatter effect finish. So he wants something, you know, it doesn't have to be show quality, but he wants it to look nice. He wants to do the boat justice. So I'm going to give this boat like a one wipe wonder in terms of fairing. So what I mean by that is I'm going to knock down all the high spots, and then I'm just going to do a tight fairing wipe across the deck, and then give that a nice sand, and that should leave me with a pretty straight surface that by the time we gel coat it and do splatter coat with non-skid, it's going to look really good as a finished product, and I think Austin's going to be really happy with it. Yeah, look at that deck. All right, I just finished first coat of gel coat. I'm doing two. This is just to seal all the glass work. Austin is going to have his buddy. He does really nice splatter, exactly the way Austin wants it. So he's going to finish it in the Whisper Gray. So I'm just giving it a good base to seal all the work. Yeah. Hell yeah. All the different layers of laminations back here, and it looks pretty damn awesome. You know? I'm happy with it. Super happy with it. Look at that. So for the back deck of this boat, Austin wanted to move a little weight forward. We wanted to hopefully lower the water line on the boat and how the boat sits. We're definitely doing that with lighter weight using all composite material, but also by us moving that back deck forward a little bit, that's going to help with weight distribution. So what I did was I got his back deck, I flipped it upside down, and I laid it on a big flat table. I just simply laminated from the underside and added a distance. This is also going to make it where Austin can tilt and trim his motor forward a little bit more. I think he was limited on that. So after I've already laminated this panel, now I can trim it, and this panel is going to fit nice and snug and move some weight a little bit farther forward and allow a little more room for his outboard engine. All right, friends, well, there you have it. That concludes part 2 of the Catamaran skiff build. I know this was a little bit different than the norm. Well, I gave it my best shot. Let me know what you think about the video. If you like some of the how-to stuff. It's definitely extra time consuming, but if you guys really dig it, I'll try to do it a little bit better next time. Maybe lay out a little bit of a storyline and some actual step-by-step procedures. So let me know what you think. As always, I really appreciate you guys tuning into the channel, following this build, your likes, your comments, your subscriptions. I sound like a broken record, but I am so thankful for you all and all the energy and good vibes you put into the channel. So until next time, I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.